Okay, welcome to the Antelope Coalition weekly meeting. So the first thing we would love to cover is the IBC Faster Finality agreement. I think, Jesse, there was still a question about the actual payment modalities or ways that this is going to be happening. So, Guillaume, you want to kind of outline the things that we've started to discuss?
Absolutely. So essentially, we got everyone's signature. Everything is in order. So we started doing the work. There's a number of milestones for Fast Finality and IBC that span over a period of about 2 years. For the first 8 or 9 months, these milestones are covered by the ENF. So essentially, the ENF is paying us in EOS for these milestones. Then there are a few milestones where there is a proportional contribution from EOS and then from WAX and TELOS on the other end. And for the last few milestones, the cost is paid by WAX and TELOS. So essentially, this is how the milestone table has been structured. What we discussed was essentially Origin has the option to lock tokens that are yet to be paid into our upcoming AMM that runs on EOS Network. However, this will take probably a few months before we're up and running. And it also depends on IBC being live on all coalition chains. So until we reach that point, essentially the ENF is going to pay the first milestones directly to Origin whenever they are reached. And then after the AMM is launched and everything has been deployed, then we can move the funds from all 3 chains, whatever remains to be paid from the ENF plus the TELOS and the WAX total amounts. We can move them to the IBC to the AMM that resides on EOS Network, and then these are to be used for providing liquidity on that on the AMM. And it's to be noted that the LP tokens that are associated with these funds will be held under escrow until the milestones are essentially unlocked and reached. So this is essentially the state of the current agreement for the payment of the milestones. If there's anyone who has any questions, I can do it.
Is the escrow just going to be multi-sig?
Yeah, exactly. Probably what's going to be details are to be determined, but I think it's it would be something like a specific account on EOS Network where all the representatives of the other 3 chains would hold a key, and we can have either a 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 3 multi-sig to release these funds upon.
Okay. We're not doing any fancy smart contract, just one account with the multi-sig holds the LP. Okay, and
I think that's fancy enough.
It is. It's the great thing is that the Antelope multi-sig is not even a smart contract, and it does more than some platform smart contract multi-sigs. Did I miss it, or did you say what you wanted done with the TELOS, the WAX in the meantime until the IBC is ready? Do you want us just to hold on to it, or do you want us to set up?
Yeah, no, I think it's fine. It's fine for you guys to hold on to it. I think we've established a precedent in a certain degree of trust between our respective teams. So
there's also a legally binding contract that underlines all of this.
True, absolutely. But yeah, no, you can as long as you guys earmark these tokens for future delivery, that's fine. You don't have to do it officially on chain.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're going to put it into an account just for this purpose, and we can put ourselves on it, or we can put you on it as another signer. Either way, if you want to give us a key, either way. I was just checking how much.
Sure.
But okay,
quite relaxed. Whatever makes the most sense for everyone.
Well, it will be.
Is anybody looking forward to the day? Anybody looking forward to the day when we will have contract, when thanks to IBC and some of these other developments that we're doing, we'll be able to have multi-sigs where we sign on our own respective chains.
Yeah,
I know I am. I'm geeking out about that a little bit.
That's pretty cool. I agree.
Yeah, that's good. It's kind of some advertising promotion effort in this call. Yeah, everybody's excited about this. I think it's just we can't wait to have it.
Cool. Well, that answers all my questions about how we're handling the payments. So, thank you.
And just maybe to add to the Fast Finality IBC, I don't know if we had a specific agenda item. If not, I can just give a quick update here, 1 minute. Or if we have an agenda item for it, we can get back to it later.
Yes, we do have that. We are also talking to Jeff and Adam earlier this week. We would also like to basically define the approver/champions for those projects. So while we're talking about that, it would be great to get an update. So I would actually love to go to agenda point 1, which was also kind of brought up by Jesse and also by Eve when we started the meeting. Which is the LEAP 3.1 system contract implementations. So, Jesse, you would like to raise your concerns here, please?
Yeah, I mean, unless everybody's read the conversations that Stan and myself had the Monday or Tuesday, whatever day it was. Maybe it was yesterday. I think it was yesterday. I mean, do I need to explain everything that was discussed there, or should I just give a high level?
I think a high level would be great. So the viewers of the video have some context.
Oh, absolutely. So early in the coalition conversations, in fact, I believe somewhere on the top 20 list were some items like unsellable RAM and certain improvements to the system contracts, which made me have the assumption that we were going to have, reference system contracts in the Antelope scope under the Antelope organization on GitHub. And we also had at one point discussed some of the, small, pretty generic but valuable features that TELOS, WAX, EOS, UX might have added to their customized system contracts. That might make sense to bring that into the reference system contracts. For instance, on TELOS, 2 years ago, we made it possible to just kind of send TELOS to through Rex, so we can distribute like staking rewards through Rex without having to actually rent the resources. I think EOS just talked about or actually did, or maybe Block One was going to do it. I don't remember, but there was talk about doing the same thing on the reference system contracts because it's a useful thing. So we just talked about, there, like you have on the screen, number 10, number 11. There's a number of things here that just made me feel like, of course, we would have the same EOSIO.contracts repository underneath the Antelope scope. It would continue to be generally a reference implementation or a vanilla implementation of system contracts that we've all, and I think EOS has generally ran those as is, the reference contracts, whereas TELOS has made changes, WAX and UX, I think, as well, right? So we've all had to maintain our changes to the reference implementation within our own, forks or, clones of those reference contracts. So I just assumed, based on those conversations and everything here, that Antelope would have a contracts repo or Antelope.contracts. I don't think that makes sense. We want to take the name out. So you would have, reference contracts or whatever. So that's where I started the conversation in our core group, because I noticed I couldn't find them when Mandel was released. I tasked one of our engineers to, he's already done it, but I wanted to say, hey, let's apply all of our changes on the latest reference contracts for 3.1 and then go, start the testing and begin our upgrade process. So when I couldn't find those, he couldn't find those. He was pointed to the ENF organization and the EOS system contracts repository. That's so clearly the EOS one. That's where I brought up the conversation, like where I think there was just some, whether it's confusion or just something missed or what the intention was there, but that's where the conversation was. So I think that's what we need to talk about is how we all want to handle that And I could go into more detail about the thoughts and the conversations we had with Arig and Stan, but I think that maybe I've covered it enough.
I think there's one point that I'd add, which is it's more than just an assumption that you made. It's in line with everything we've discussed, because one of our core values here is to make this a repository that anyone can roll out an Antelope-based chain. And if we don't include a basic, the basic system contracts with that, then that's not true, right? Then and further, we talk about how the strength of having multiple features and allowing new people implementing these on the chains to come, to be able to pick and choose from a wide variety of features. So obviously we don't include everything. There's limits to what we include, but there are some bits and pieces that should be included for two reasons. Primarily what I'm talking about now, because it allows people to actually do what we're saying they can do, and take and roll out different features and then turn them on and turn them off at compiling or whatever, and rapidly roll out new Antelope-based chains, which is one of our prime things we're talking about. And then secondly, there's a second thing around security, that the more we include in these reference contracts, the faster we can respond in case of any kind of security patch situation, because there's less there's more we could do together and share those critical resources, and less that each chain then has to also do on top of it. So those I think are two very important considerations. And I think that in everything we've talked about so far, even at what we talked about in the last meeting, where EOS said, well, there's going to be a reference implementation, and there's going to be ours, and we're not just going to make it the vanilla one. That's not possible to do unless we actually have a standalone vanilla one. So thanks for coming to my tech talk. That's what I think.
Would you like me to kind of address this a little bit, or do you want to speak first? Or
you can go first, and then I'll add my part after.
I think the thinking was, when we did this, was that each chain had already made a fork of EOSIO.contracts, and therefore you would just use your own. And that's why the repo has none there. You would link back to yours for WAX or for TELOS, and we link back to EOSIO. If you prefer that we, and I'll talk to Arig about this, if you prefer we stick the EOSIO.contracts in, and just as it sits, I think what got conflated in the thread is Arig started talking about wanting to modularize it and split it all out. And that's not the point you were bringing up, Jesse. You're saying, hey, it's missing. Where is it? I can't build. And Arig started going into the future, which I think it was not actually pertinent to the point of you were not able to build the system. So I think it's reasonable that we put the base what was our vanilla base contract in there. And then each team can start to migrate away to whatever they want to do with their own contracts. Obviously, you guys have always maintained changes on top of what we call the base contract. I think we also threw in some Ricardian stuff as well. That makes sense to me. I followed along with the fact that you guys are like, hey, the build system doesn't work because of this. We can't just deploy a simple change. But I think it should just be the base. Probably we want to move away from the EOSIO name. So whether we just call it, reference contracts or whatever, that probably take a small amount of work. It's not terribly hard. So unless Eve disagrees, I think we can probably do that. But that's nothing to do with what Arig, which kind of I felt confounded the matter a little bit, started talking about breaking them into smaller parts. And there was a little bit of discussion around smaller CPP files and stuff like that, which is irrelevant to the base. The base is, let's just get a base contract set of base contracts sitting over in Antelope that are vanilla. We'll call them maybe reference.contracts if that's not controversial to anyone. And then that just lets everybody start from ground zero. And you guys will then obviously fork that and modify it to have the changes you've made in TELOS and WAX, and we'll start changing it. And if in the future things like unsellable RAM get prioritized and the coalition, jointly pays for it, that will get done as well, et cetera. Does this all sound reasonable to folks on the call?
Yeah, and I would second what TELOS guys are saying. I don't want to go spelunking looking for stuff. It should be all together. Mm-hmm. So that way we can just fork the repo and have everything in one place, make any modifications that we need to, and that's that.
I think it was probably just not communicated well and discussed well enough before you guys tripped over it. I see it, and we'll work to correct that.
Yeah. So the understanding. So what we are now fixing and where we're going is what was my understanding from the beginning. So there's no misunderstanding there. There's no malintent or anything like that. It does bring about, though, a larger discussion that I want to have based on what I did read through that thread and based on some of the things that have been said here. The term "we" is used very loosely. We are working on this port and such. Let's be very open and honest. It's the ENF that's doing all of the work for this. This is something that we need to address going forward. Right now, the coalition is getting together to assign resources and prioritize the larger ticket items. Nowhere, though, is the coalition actually paying for the maintenance and or contributing to the maintenance of the base code. So yes, the contract should all be referenced. Everything should be in there. I would like the other coalition members to recognize that no other coalition members currently is taking care of the reference implementation of Antelope other than the ENF. And this is a huge cost that we're taking, not just in terms of financial resource, but in terms of non-fungible developers. So in that thread that I saw when we were having, when Jesse, Douglas, RX, Stan were having that discussion, there was also, again, a lot of reference of we will, when really it should be, well, actually, we're expecting the ENF to do this and we're earmarking work on the ENF, and that can't be the case. Another thing that I want to ensure is that right now we are bearing all of those costs. We do need to figure out going forward, how do we actually either split up those costs or leave the base implementation as is and then start assigning different priorities and then figure out what does go in the base implementation and what doesn't. This is something that we haven't really talked about so far.
Yeah,
I mentioned, well, go ahead, Jesse, first.
I was just going to say two things. One, well, maybe three things. So hold on. But first, Ted, I think I did contribute towards kind of some of the implementation and solution stuff. I wouldn't say Ari just kind of went down that rabbit hole alone, because I brought up some of the modularization and making things configurable. And I tried to bring it back, because what I was trying to solve in that conversation was the fact, as you said, that the things were just missing. And I think in that conversation, the point I made was we can't, have a conversation in the future about how we can make things more configurable if we don't have that thing that was missing. So we get that in there. We take as is, the EOSIO contracts that evolved into Mandel contracts, and we just need to have some reference contracts there. I'm fine with the name reference, and leave them as is. And from there, then we can, in the future, as we pay for things, and Noam, you can tell me if I'm wrong or not, but maybe some of the, maybe not, but there's probably some things in the reference contracts that need to be updated, or new APIs that are available that come out of whether it's IBC, faster finality, or other things, right? Like as Antelope delivers new features in Leap in the base layer, the system contracts the reference contracts need to show how to do that and start consuming the new APIs. Things get fixed, whatever it is. The reference contract in my mind is where those contributions go. So kind of to your point, Eve, like as we fund things, they may need to include some changes to the system contracts, and having those changes done in the reference contracts then of course allows TELOS, EOS, WAX, and UX to go, pull the upstream changes from the reference contracts into our individual implementations, and we then get those things that the coalition has funded. And so, that's kind of where I see it, and having that conversation down the road, figuring out how to make them more modular, figuring out how to make them easier for all of us to do that upgrade process, I think is something that we definitely should plan on doing, but we don't need to prioritize. And then to kind of what you brought up, I absolutely recognize that you guys have managed the whole GitHub. You've managed everything of renaming it, the CI/CD. I mean, I see all the hard work that OCI and all your in-house engineers are doing. I fully expect and think we should have the conversation, and you should be compensated for it, as we all can agree, would be fair.
Actually, what I want to bring up is maybe we don't even want to be compensated. Like at some point, those devs are non-fungible, just like your devs and everybody's devs are non-fungible. It's more than just the financial compensation. At some point, somebody else also needs to contribute technical competency to this somehow. We need to work.
Actually, that's what I was gonna get to. Is like, I think, we've now agreed, and I'm glad it was just, we've cleared it up. We'll have a reference contracts repository under Antelope. And B, when we have that, I'd love to be able to have some of our engineers help do some of that. It's definitely more in our wheelhouse than, let's say, the very low level stuff that, is being done by Origin with faster finality, or, your engineers that deal with some of the real minutia of, Node OS and Leap stuff, right? So I think, like when I say we, like some of the modularization stuff, in my mind, how I kind of see it is like, as we go forward, if TELOS wants to add a special customization, or for instance, the schedule sorted by location versus by alphabetical, like some of those changes are things that I know we'd love to put in upstream, to put in the reference contracts. So when we do our upgrades, we have less changes to apply on top, and it's more configurable. I could see us doing those types of things, and then as other chains say, hey, I'd like to do this feature, it would make sense in the reference contracts. Hey guys, can I make, I've made a pull request to the reference contracts to add a flag to change this behavior because we want it, but we don't want to have it be like a customization for us. So we can kind of all work together to collectively kind of curate and evolve those reference contracts. Definitely would see us being able to contribute more with that. Up until now, you guys have been running with it and done a great job. And there's, been, not that the door's been closed, but you've been just running with it. Like, don't want to interrupt the engineers that have been doing it for 3 years from just keeping it doing what they've done so well, right? But I think we should consider how we can let you have your engineers back and contribute with hours from the coalition networks, or maybe we need to find a third-party team in an RFP process that does a little bit of the maintenance there. I don't know. We'll have to figure out what that looks like. But
I think that's
Guillaume, may I ask? Sorry, sure. Guillaume, because Douglas has raised his hand for a while, so you'll be the next one to talk about. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Douglas.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'll try and be brief then. I did mention this last week on our call that you have an excellent point that ENF shouldn't have to be covering all these, but I think the solution is that everyone else has to start lifting some of the weight as well, both in terms of developer resources and in financial resources. It's not fair to you, but it's also not within the stated vision of what we're trying to do here to have everything be under ENF, right? We have to remember that our goal here is not only the 4 of our chains, but all the other existing chains and all the future chains to come on the Antelope protocol.
We do not want it under ENF. Just to make it clear that there was no misalignment there. We do not want it under ENF.
That's great. I actually think there's very little misalignment. When you said earlier, well, there was no harm, there's no harmful intent. I never thought there was. We are, this is something that came up in offline channels, and now we are dealing with it very effectively. I think I think this is good. We need to move down that direction. It's not fair for you guys to do all the work and then have to share it, but it's also the right solution isn't to keep going down that path. We've got to make this something that everybody, contributes to. As Jesse said, make a path for features that are useful, that others develop, and that we anticipate to be useful for new chains to be able to adopt easily. So that's I'll cut short what else I was going to say so that Guillaume can speak.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. So Guillaume.
So I was gonna go in the same direction than Jesse, and I guess Douglas as well, where I think it's important to recognize the ELF contribution, but also I think if in terms of the process and how we go about this, it would make sense to reuse as much as possible. I think the existing processes that we're putting together, say with the RFP system, for example. So things like, in this case, like let's say like what Eric was suggesting, like the modularity of smart contract moving forward, I definitely see value in that. This potentially could be an RFP then that we would open up for bidding, and maybe the ENF is the one who bids on it and ends up doing it. Like doesn't prevent this scenario. However, in general, I think the more we stick to the RFP process, the better it's going to be, because it will kind of standardize all of that. All that work is going to go through the same funnels, and it's going to be treated in a consistent manner, and it will simplify also these questions. It will kind of make it more fair and more obvious who is taking care of what, and what can various teams contribute.
Thank you. So as we are discussing this, and we basically the chains, I assume, Lucas, you also agree to those points?
Yes, I wanted to add that it would be great to have an ability for public contributions to the repos. Yes. Maybe in a similar way like the Apache Foundation is being run, where you've got a more formalized process with RFPs for larger lifts, but then you've got community of the willing who is actually actively working on projects and contributing because they have a vested interest. So that would allow us as WACs to also contribute some of the changes, and then for the community to evaluate if they're useful for everyone. And then I do agree that, and for some reason I thought that the scope of the coalition was also to pay for maintenance of the core code. So if that is not the case,
then definitely we need to up the budget if that's the case.
Well, I understand, but I guess that warrants at least a discussion what that's going to look like.
Agreed. Yeah, and we didn't. I'm not asking for any past contributions at all. What I'm saying is that it can't be sustainable where we are assumed to be the ones to take care of it, because we would also like to work on our, when we talked about the contracts and having our flavored contracts, EOS doesn't have any, in part because historically it always did the vanilla, but in part right now because the engineers are doing the Antelope protocol and not the EOS flavored side of things because they're non-fungible, right? So it would be great to be able to do that as well. But yes, I do see a future where a lot of the work that we're doing right now as the NF, we're holding both hats. We're effectively like the Antelope Foundation as well from a code point of view right now, kind of by default. But at some point, it would be great to move away from that so that we are more similar, let's say, than all the other chains where we work on our add-on version, but that Antelope itself has kind of the function that we're doing right now by default. But the cost is, and I recognize that the cost is quite prohibitive right now. So even if I believe the coalition would want to contribute to that treasury, it would likely not be able to do so at this stage to the ratios that we've even already predetermined, for example, because the cost is quite high.
Yeah, so everybody does recognize this. I think that's very clear from all the statements that we had on the call. So, but everybody also agrees we need to find a solution going forward for this. But I've opened up like a different task for this topic to discuss about this. So to kind of close this one here. So we agreed that somebody needs to take responsibility and drive this forward and collect those contracts as Ted proposed. To take the vanilla contracts, we might want to add some others that seem to be important at this point of time. So who's taking the task to coordinate this? And
we will do this. We will ensure that it's basically what Antelope is left with is kind of what we had before Antelope. So that everybody's on the same playing field as before. We'll make those changes, rectify that so that it's back to being what I believe everybody believed that we would launch with.
Okay, and so actually, Ted, you would probably be the one that mostly acts on this.
Yeah, I'll work with REG, and we will get I think we've agreed it's going to be called reference.contracts, put into the Antelope repo and get it where a build, just a straight Antelope should work. And then obviously each team has to use their, fork that repo and put their code in because you want your own system contracts, et cetera, in there. But I'll get that to where what will then be in Mandel will be a fork off of Antelope. Today, obviously, we were just keeping that one, and I'll work through it with REG. I'm sure he'll explain to me everything I'm explaining incorrectly.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, then I would move over to the next one. It's legal entity. Has there been any activity on this item?
There has not.
Okay. So should I keep this in here, or should I basically move it to the backlog? We discussed it last week that we would want to drive this forward, but probably the priority is not
priority still. Yeah, right now.
Yeah. So then I would probably move this into the backlog for now, and we kind of take a look at this. What is a good time? Maybe end of September.
There's never a good time. It's just going to be work. We ultimately need to make a decision on what type of entity we want, where it's going to be incorporated, and that's the hard part. Absorbing the cost won't be so much. Setting up the structure won't be so much. It's really just the making the decision. And right now, there's no pressing need to do so because of the way that we signed IBC faster finality. It didn't require that. Because of the code, we all agreed will be MIT open source. No need for that. It'll be more so for when perhaps we start dealing with larger amount of funding, where perhaps Antelope, the foundation, let's say, or the entity would want to perhaps have some staff, or where the sum of monies would become quite larger. So perhaps shelve it until it's then required. And then once it's required, it really is, we make a decision on where, 24 hours later, it's done. Like it's or a week later, it's done. So it's relatively quick.
Yeah. Okay. So I just put it in the backlog for end of September to kind of reassess that. Unless, Guillaume, it's basically your work group or item, unless you disagree.
Well, as we said, as Yves mentioned, the reason why we thought it was important to advance on that was in order to transfer any IP to the legal entity for IBC and mostly IBC. But then now, since it's no longer a requirement due to the way we structured the agreement, I'm not too stressed out about that part. Happy to do some groundwork, however, and take that on me. So no problem. I can start looking at different structures and come up with a proposal.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I just followed the chat. Aaron, sorry, I did miss that comment that you put into the chat because I'm kind of working with two big screens. Do you want to? That was still related to the system contract libraries. What you've written into the chat?
Yeah, primarily it seems like there's one potential solution to a lot of these divided things. If we're looking for owners of specifically the reference contracts right now, and it leads nicely into the legal entity topic, because the legal entity it's going to house the repos. It's going to kind of make the decisions. It's taking the burden of these common elements off of individual chains and taking what's common and having them owned and overseen by all of these chains. Like, that's what we're talking about with the reference contracts. But that same idea also goes back to the discussion about documentation last week. It goes down to protocol. It will be involved in the SDKs. Like, a lot of the common goods that we're developing have this same struggle, like long term, who maintains it? So we don't want that to all fall on or like burden one party more than any of the others. So it's a matter of figuring out how that burden is shared across all of these topics. And it's interesting that the legal entity is the next discussion, because that legal entity could in some way be a part of that.
Yes and no. Like, the legal entity in itself is just a shell.
Yeah.
But you can have the people without the entity. And if you have the entity, you still don't resolve the people.
True.
Right. And so this is where I think legal entity is a little bit less of a priority. We need to find people who will be owners of this, whether it be individual teams or whether it be now teams that report to that new entity or that form that entity. But what we're missing is people that either aren't already in our respective chains that kind of just magically come about, or a combination of a bunch of our people that now kind of take that on as a function. Yeah. But the owners basically can happen without the entity.
Yep.
But you're right that everything you've mentioned there, and probably others, would be the common code that should be shared throughout. And you're right that documentation falls alongside that as well. It's like everything that would be common to everybody.
Yeah. And I just brought it up to point out that like a lot of the debate that goes on kind of stems from this same topic. It's when we were talking about documentation, it was like, okay, this is something EOS needed. So EOS was like, we're going to do it, but maybe the way EOS would have done it if it was just for itself isn't the same as if it was for everyone. And the same with these system contracts. I feel like that's how this discussion spawned. So I just brought that up to recognize that common through line that we've bumped into a couple times now. I don't know the solution,
and we will bump in again.
Yes. Yeah.
That's why I'm trying to bring this up now, is we need to figure out what's going to happen later on.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay. So having that, we did discuss, I would like to move to the next topic, which is kind of transparency on status reports that kind of locks into the other topics. We've been in the other weekly call, actually doesn't have a name, it's like project management alignment call that Jeff, Adam have on a weekly basis. We discussed about like status reports and the transparency we want to apply to those. Jeff, you want to shortly explain what we discussed, and maybe you could open up those reports once more so we have in mind what we're talking about.
So sure, but I think this might make sense if we kind of go in a different order, because we were also talking about kind of weekly status updates from the Faster Finality project. And first discussing that, if we could keep, like there's no scheduled meetings right now. And if we could put a half an hour, it's not quite a working group meeting, but really think of it as a status report that focuses completely on that project. Maybe we put it at the Scalability time slot, since those meetings have dropped. And we would make it optional for most people, but I think, I would be there, Adam would be there. I think, Kirsten, you said you would want to be there as well. So that's, first of all, I think that throw that out to Guillaume. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, we actually confirmed, I confirmed with Eric and Matt that this time slot is good for these kind of meetings. So we actually had one this previous Tuesday this past Tuesday, where we began the review process for IBC. I'll touch on that a bit later. But yes, in general, I think it makes perfect sense. There's like at this point, we're really talking more about code reviews and internal audit. So it's more it's not really a progress report. It's like more the ENF that's kind of looking into our code and asking questions, going over the whole thing. But moving forward, when that particular work is done, I think that's a perfect use of that time slot.
Okay. Yeah. So maybe we can talk about.
Short question. Sorry, Jeff. When is that meeting?
This meeting is at Tuesday, 2 p.m. Eastern.
Thank you. Okay. Sorry, Jeff.
So if you
Go
could
on, please.
add me to that meeting, because I don't see that on my calendar anymore. And then I can worry about a lot of the tactical stuff afterwards, other things we need to talk about, risk management and that kind of stuff. But one of the things that we discussed as a coalition at this point, like 3 months ago, is there was like a status reporting template, and we were all happy with it. It's a generic 4-box. It has typical things, milestones, issues, risks, accomplishments, upcoming tasks, that, nothing everybody hasn't seen before, which would be an output of those weekly meetings. That led into our discussion of, do we want to post those in a place like GitHub that the whole world can see, or do we feel the internal statuses of the meetings is something that should only be available to the coalition? And so that's what the first ticket here means.
Yeah, and since all the code base is public, we were just wondering if it does make sense to kind of keep the status reports secretive while the code is actually visible to the outside world. So whoever wanted to know anything would be able to look into the code base anyway. So we wonder if there's any requirement from anybody that says we don't want to publicize those status reports inside the repos. So does anybody object in having the status reports public inside the repos?
I'm good with that. I do not object. That could have been confusing. I do not object.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, as I said earlier before we start recording, we should always err on the side of transparency, and I think that this is just another example of that.
Okay, great. That's quick, easy. Can move to the next topic.
Will be public, all agree. Next item is, because we didn't have much update about this, because Lucas, you always had to leave when I wanted to touch that issue. So I would love you to, before you have to jump off in 7 minutes, lucky one, could you give us an update on where we stand with the Scalability Plus blue papers that you've been working on?
Sure. The only thing that I need to do is update the screenshots with the latest data, and I'm gonna get that done this week, and then we can just put it in the format for the blue papers template, and it's gonna be done.
So the other concern with that one is it was all EOSIO everywhere, because at the time that was the protocol we were working on, and that's, I guess, still what was being written about in that paper. But now that we've kind of shifted, do we go back through it and kind of go with the current instance of what was once called EOSIO?
Do you want me to rename it to Antelope? Or say Antelope and then maybe in brackets like EOSIO, whatever, like as legacy reference? Or just leave it as Antelope?
I think we all know it. So I'm not sure if we need the reference to this name that shouldn't be named anymore.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so
I'll make those modifications as well. No worries.
Great. Yeah, I think from my standpoint,
we're going to institute an EOSIO swear jar, so that everybody has to put
EOSIO the
every time
new Voldemort?
It is.
Is that the idea?
It's the new
swear jar that we're going to.
Thou shall not be named.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of. That's what I thought of. So
one
as a side
every
note,
time you say it.
As a side note, I saw those tweets, and I just don't understand why Dan couldn't hold off and kind of going at those Antelope tweets. It was just ridiculous. But anyway, as a side note, thank you for the update, Lucas. So everybody's gonna be eagerly waiting for this to review and work on that. Okay, so this is done. So there is a comment of you, Eve, in the chat about the budgets that have been spent. Do you want to kind of outline this once more, or was that just a side comment?
No, I was just giving context, and I was writing while we were still on the topic, and I just didn't get a chance to actually pull up the numbers. But I wanted to put it out in context when we were talking about potentially onboarding those costs. I know they're still very much prohibitive. So for those, I don't know if on the call, you can see the chat, but anyways, I just published basically the numbers that are already public in the Q2 report. And those costs are really vanilla to only Antelope, essentially, because we don't have any EOS version or anything. And so we have very precise accounting on that. And yeah, it's just short of $4.6 million for the last quarter. So that runs at between $16 to $20 million per year, which is for those who remember and for those who were there 8 months ago when we started forming EOSI Plus, aligns with what we thought the cost was based on what we had known from Block 1 and stuff. So it's about $20 million per year, which far exceeds anything that we've committed to at this stage as a group, as a coalition, right? Let alone extra priority. So I know we're not there yet at all. So that's not, I'm not asking for that at all.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a good point. So seeing that figure, I'd love to move this one to the backlog for like a year or so.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
So yeah, maybe we shouldn't talk about this today, but I think it is a topic that we should bring up at a reasonable time. Maybe when we have the more strategic discussions about prioritization, which also have an impact on budget as we talk about the reprioritization of the top 21 items. So probably that's a good point in time to discuss that early September. So it's not so far away.
Maintaining the core code, in my view, is the primary responsibility of this group. That's what brought us together. It was the core need we filled. We're doing a lot more, and that's wonderful. But I think that should always be included on the list. As a 3 stars at the top, right? So we kind of put dessert before the main meal, and ENF is paying for all our meals, and we're splitting the costs of the dessert, and that can't last forever. So I think that we just need to figure out how to do that. As just said, anything we can do to get everybody's prices up helps us equalize those expenses at no cost to anybody else. So hopefully there are things we can do along those lines. But we can't just push it,
If at some point the projects can be so valuable, then the amounts will be somewhat irrelevant.
Absolutely. Yes. But we need to always keep that at the center of our focus, and not just, you've given us the luxury of not thinking about that by doing it, but that's not the right way to go long term, and it's how it had to happen historically. But so the development could continue. But we have to pay, everyone has to pay our share, and we have to be a coalition in this. And that's what we should work towards getting towards.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for that. I would love
if I can just before, I'd like to just add a quick comment here. One of the ways that we can probably help address that that I've discussed, I think in private with Eve and with Stefan, was to institute at some point some core developer workshops where essentially these would be open to I guess pretty much anyone who has who wants to participate, but who would like to become a core developer of Antelope. And I think it also matches the hiring schedule of the ENF. They have some people coming in that will have to undergo some training. So this is something maybe we if everyone agrees, I'd like to create an item for that and start addressing that and working on making it the reality. I think it would be hugely valuable and would allow us potentially to also gain additional developers that could contribute and lower the cost and the maintenance moving forward. When Eve talks about the fungibility of developers, the non-fungibility of developers, this mitigates that up to a certain point.
Right. Professional development of our developer community is something Eve and I had talked about quite a bit early on, and I think we all think it's an important point.
So just so I understand, that would be a kind of a workshop where it would be open for anybody to attend, and the material covered would help them be able to contribute to the core code and help maintain it. Or is that more about building on top of it?
No, I think it would be, the details of how that would work still have to be determined, of course, but what I had in mind was actually to have a kind of maybe it's a weekly 1 or 2 hour seminar by the core developers of the ENF, where they kind of go over like the code structure, processes and conventions that we want to adhere to, other things that could also touch, like various repos that need to be worked on that are part of the core Antelope software, so on and so forth. So that's the general idea. Of course, all the details are to be determined, but this is something that we've discussed because as we start working on faster finality, this would be very useful to us, getting us some orientation and onboarding to the code base. And I think it has value for a lot of other people as well that might be called upon to perform similar roles moving forward. So yeah, in a sense, I would probably try to open it to everyone. Make it maybe in cohorts, so like people would have to register, potentially, like have one group at a time. Like if that total workshop takes like 3 months or something, maybe we do one cohort at a time, and we just bring a handful. It doesn't have to be that many, but I think if we're able to bring say like 5 or 8 new developer for 3 months to the code base, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I think. I was thinking, as we were talking about these other items and moved forward from the first one, the ENF has shouldered the work to migrate twice, right? From EOSIO to Mandel and then Mandel to Antelope, and move all of the code and the repositories. And there's a lot of organizational and like administrative overhead, but there's also technical, things that have to be done. In my experience and, from my perspective, getting that to where we need it to be in the Antelope organization so that it's working is a heavy lift. Once you get it there, as we saw with Block 1, the amount of ongoing effort can be very little if there's not a lot of changes and actual features being added. So, I feel like, the overhead and the cost and the time of people should go down significantly once we just get it all in the new organization, the new repo with, some of the testing and stuff, up and running. And then as contributions come in, that, you don't have to do another migration for each new feature. So hopefully that amount of, NFT developer resources goes down significantly. And I think what you're talking about here dovetails very well into, I'd love to send some of our, TELOS engineers to that, obviously record it so that it can be captured for others and read later. But, I'd love to send, a couple of our folks that are already familiar with it, but just to get that almost like a handoff from the ENF, and let's face it, the resources that ENF has are the ones who have done it at Block 1 for years. Get that handoff from them, document the handoff. Not that they're going to disappear, but let's try to enable a new set of folks, or just grow the set of folks that can help with that. But it's almost like a handoff. It's like now these things are in the hands of more people. It's documented, and they understand it as well. And then we can look at how, maybe we don't have to put a bunch of financial resources into ongoing maintenance if, each chain has had some members of their teams, gone through that training or whatever you want to call it. And we establish a little bit of a process, like Lucas said, to treat it a little bit more like the Apache approach. And, but that education and that handoff is critical. So yeah, that sounds like a great idea, and maybe can get us to a really good place as far as maintenance goes, that we can operate more like Apache and other networks, like
and we remove the risk of so we can allow those 3 or 4 core devs to finally fly on the same airplane again.
Very much. Yeah. So unfortunately, Lucas had to drop off because we actually wanted to go into the faster finality IBC status, plus discussion about the approvers that we wanted to assign to that project. So maybe, Guillaume, you want to give us an update on where you stand right now before we discuss about who the champions are that will actually be defined as approvers for the coalition.
Yeah. So essentially, we signed the agreement earlier this week. So now everything is in place. The first 2 milestones are essentially pretty much complete. We're just waiting for internal review and approval by the ENF. So I guess that ties into the approver/champion question. The reality, kind of also to the point we were making before, in terms of core developers and people that are familiar with the code base. The reality is, for IBC and faster finality, it's really the ENF and probably even AREG mostly that is the person who kind of validate and approve these milestones. I don't think there might be a few other developers at the ENF that might be able to help, but I doubt that there's many other people that have the skill set within our organization. So that kind of by default it just happens to be. Hopefully, we'll rectify that with these developers workshop. But that's basically the state as it stands. So we had a first review meeting on Tuesday with AREG. Matt, Aaron was present as well, and we went over I guess pretty deep dive into some of the code base, but it's going to be a process. There's essentially 3 smart contracts. There's the IBC API proof server. Then there's also testing automation and framework. And then there's also our reference UI that we're publishing as part of the solution. So that makes 6 pretty big pieces that all need to be looked at and reviewed. So I expect this process to take a few weeks. We will hopefully. We had a first discussion on Tuesday. A few minor items were brought up, so we're working on addressing these and making these small improvements. Once we're ready, once we've got the thumbs up by AREG, we are ready pretty much on a moment's notice to deploy this on Jungle and Kylin for open beta, if you want. So that's pretty much how it stands right now, where we are. I think that covers it.
On that front, whenever we are ready to deploy or leading up to the deployment, I would really like for us to consider the marketing aspect of this and how we can. So the marketing of Antelope was really good, or we're growing, but it is really good. Let's continue down that trend of everything that we're doing as a group. We really push that marketing alongside it, so that the eyes are on the progress that Antelope is doing.
Yeah. One more thing I forgot to add is I spoke with the auditor that we are looking to hire to audit the IBC smart contracts, and they should be able to finish to perform the audit in the next 2 months and finish it before the end of October, essentially. So as per the milestone calendar, we're not delayed by the audit from the looks of it. So that's good news. And then I guess it will depend on the review and internal audit process, but everything seems to be going pretty well so far. So and we're on it. So any issue that surface we'll be able to address very quickly.
Very good. So I've put this on the media releases board here, having this IBC marketing strategy development. Obviously, this is a topic where we can attract a lot of people that are interested in like Cosmos ecosystem, because we could act comparably if we wanted to. What I'd love to see, though, Aaron, I see a lot of your tweets. Eve, I see a lot of your tweets. There's also a buzzing NFT community on TELOS nowadays. So, love to mention that if you will. No, but generally, speaking about this, I think it's one of the key leverage from my personal opinion for all chains to really play this in a big way. So I totally agree to that point.
One thing that same thing that the discussion we had with the code base and documentation that highlighted when we released Antelope, the rebrand, is that the media side of things as well. We really need this is the easy part that people can do, just like simple retweets and simple also communicating to media. So it was brought up that the media didn't pick up on certain the certain details of who is part of the coalition and how that works. A big part of that is because nobody else other than us reached out to the media. So we give them lines, they go off and they do their own thing. It would be something that's somewhat low threshold that other people can do as well. Otherwise, yes, we're wearing that hat as well for everybody else.
I think that was a conscious decision not to, I guess, put out different publications that might create some confusion. Because that could be odd if, say, TELOS uses our PR entity to push things out, and it's a completely different release. And those
but even not less so the press release, more so the everything that supports that, like the blogs from the individual chains or the Twitter, the official Twitter accounts from the official chains. Like we went back and looked at the official Twitter accounts, and we get very little support when it comes to that. And it's as simple as like a retweet, like something very, very small. It literally takes 2 seconds. We've noticed that, that's a very small threshold that people could help out with as well, which would then go a long way in getting the outside media to actually see that it's maybe also more than just the NF or more than EOS, because we do see that theme currently being formed and it's not accurate and we're not feeding that information. But when you do look at media, you do see that this is the part that we're doing that others aren't really doing very much. And I think TELOS has like 100,000 people, so we've got a large reach. Wax has a large reach as well. But when we go look at the official accounts, TELOS less so, but Wax more so, there's very little discussion of Antelope. Like there's very little promotion of Antelope. So of course, if I was at the external media, I maybe tend to think that Wax isn't really the same as, let's say, EOS in that case.
One thing you might, so I'm surprised that there wasn't more retweeting from the TELOS marketing team, because I think we tried to set that up so there was. But one of the things you get on Telos is because it's, of the nature of it, you get a lot from different groups. Like I put out a video like right away to try to explain what we were doing. A Good Block did a lot. I know that other organizations did too. So I don't know why it didn't show up on the Telos core, on the Telos main marketing. I don't run that, but that's definitely a note that we'll take. But I saw a lot of promotion from Telos. Of course, that's what I'm going to see for the algorithm. But I don't think that that's entirely reflective of the support this got from the Telos community, even if it wasn't, strangely from the Telos main channels.
I think actually the Telos main channels were pretty heavy on Antelope. I think the media might have picked up some confusion because we were probably less heavy and other chains were probably less heavy pre the announcement. And I think they probably did a Google search before they wrote their articles. And so they took certain impressions from that. And I know, like, from our perspective, we maybe did less promotion pre-Antelope because we are kind of less associated with the EOSIO branding. But whereas Antelope, we are definitely more associated with that branding because we've been part of it from the beginning.
For me, I thought we didn't want to. I thought there was a embargo issue that we didn't want to risk clouding. Funny because of what actually ended up happening. But I thought that we were agreed that there was going to be one single statement and on this for, and that was a conscious decision moving forward, which is all that's really important. I think, guys on Telos side, we should really ramp up our efforts to not only support this, but create our own content, more of our own content around that. And I think that, we should, it's not, again, like development, it's not fair to expect ENF to do everything. We have all the resources we need. It does bring up the question of how much we want to, what the expectation is for people in the coalition to go out and be pushing our own things. Each time a chain pushes their own, pushes this themselves, there's going to be a perception from the others that they're putting their own, their own face forward first, because that's just naturally what any marketing department's going to do. And I guess we have to figure out how, if we have any sort of standards where, like, for myself personally, I'm like, I may mention, in my video is an example. I tried to make 90+% of that about everybody. I made maybe 10% about how it directly reflects with Telos or, my experience, which is Telos focused. But I would like us to have some kind of idea what is going to be acceptable, so that I don't do something that other people go, well, why are you not supporting? Why does it have to be all about you? I thought we were in this together, and at the same time, gives us a reason to validate why each chain would be putting something out, right? Where is that happy medium? Did I hit it with my video? Could I have gone further? We need to have kind of some kind of baseline so that we all understand what's considered fair, and and otherwise, I don't want to start problems amongst ourselves because we're taking Antelope Coalition advances and making them about our own chain.
Yeah,
no, go ahead.
Douglas, sorry to interrupt, because some of those parts, and I have to insist on that, some of those parts in regards of Telos are not true, and I disagree with them strongly. I do agree that there could have been some more communications of other chains. So, but I would love to kind of close this topic. I think it's clear. Eve has made the position very clear, and we generally agree that there could have been more outreach, but some chains have other opportunities than other chains have. So I think we should close this for now and move to the next topic.
Yeah, just before you close, just to add, we do have a task force team that we started for the launch. I think there's been good discussion there. Maybe use that forum to continue on to the launch plan for IBC and what's the go forth plan, and have representation from the teams and the chains there to try to help come back with a view of what that could be for the next 30, 60, 90 days, let's say.
Yeah. Patty, I love that idea. It's like having a work group where you actually meet with the social responsibilities and social media responsibilities or marketing responsible people of the chains and kind of coordinate these things in a real meeting, as opposed to having all those Telegram chats where a lot of information is getting lost or misunderstood. I think this would be an awesome initiative, my personal opinion.
So while we're on the topic of comms, we still have the website that we got launched for launch, which was great. It's a single page landing page. Because of just the styling, we at the last minute kind of changed it from a WordPress implementation to a custom HTML, CMS, just one-page site. It lacks certain functionality that we would expect, like WordPress would give us for like blogging and things like that. We're talking about IBC now. And that would be a good piece of content, for example, that an Antelope blog would present is on IBC. Or I guess if not that blog, then UX. I know they published an IBC article a while back. So something to, one, communicate to all of our different communities what this IBC means, and two, to serve as kind of a base level of knowledge for each individual chain to even be able to write about IBC themselves, because it'll hopefully this first piece would help with that. But going back to the website, we will need to revisit that. What we have currently is fine for now, but we do need to probably continue that go-to-market group and figure out what the next steps are, and then deciding who's going to write the copy, who's going to write the blogs, and things like that. And it kind of goes back to like the press releases and stuff. The more we could spread this out, the better. And I think we could improve in that area, but just wanted to point out the website aspect so it doesn't get lost, because I think, Patty, you said we forgot to talk about it on last week's call. So I just wanted to bring it up on this week's call so it didn't get lost.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there anybody basically volunteering for this task? I mean, the branding sounds pretty familiar, doesn't it? So, but anyway, Justin has been leading a lot of the initiatives there. So, Justin, would you be willing to take this task and drive this forward too?
Yeah, I think it's just a case of us setting up our next go-to-market call and then debriefing and working out the next steps. I think, yeah, the last call we had was it a week ago or 2 weeks ago? But we're due for scheduling a meeting, say next week, I guess, or tomorrow if you guys have time.
Yeah, I mean, there's speaking about website development, Justin. The website development, I think the coalition should actually pay for somebody to do a website, like a nice little base website with blog functionality, WordPress. It doesn't need to be very expensive, but it needs to be well done. And that could be somebody from within the coalition that bids on this. I'm not opposed to that. Just, I think it needs to be something that somebody really dedicates time to doing, not something that's slapped together. Especially for Antelope, we should have resources for this.
I agree. That was the main reason we went the direction we did on launch day, was because the WordPress implementation, there were just like design errors that Nathan James pointed out that were just not a good look. So whenever we launched, we had a crisp site, but that was only due to a lot of efforts last minute by one person. So we can improve there. But the other piece is there's even more to it. So there's like an email sign up list, like who owns that? So who owns the email list, first of all, and then who's in charge of writing the copy for anything done out of there. We don't have to do anything with it for the moment, but it is things to consider moving forward. If a project or if a company reaches out saying they want to deploy on an Antelope chain, which one should I deploy to? What happens with that email? Who answers that email?
It goes directly to TELOS. So anyway, no, we talked about those things before about sharing, auto forwarding things to each chain, but yeah, we need to set this up. We need to address all those things, and I think we need to put some kind of timeline goal on this so that it just doesn't stay. A single page is fine for a period of time, but it gets old fast. It's got to be. We got to show that kind of development, and I fully agree that with Eve that we should probably just get a dedicated website development team to do it now. A lot of problems are removed now that we don't have to remain secretive about the branding. So I don't think it's worth any of our time. We should just contract a good developer and give them a spec for what we want.
Okay, so Justin will be heading that team, and part of that will be to talk about the website, as far as I understood, as well as the ongoing go-to-market and penetration strategies. So I think that's gonna be part of that call. Aaron, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are very much talking about a marketing website right now, and this directly leads into the discussion about documentation we had. It's not only about marketing this technology, but it's about connecting people who want to use this technology to the technologies themselves. So in that sub-Telegram group we spun up, there was, which I guess to put a point on that, we're supposed to have a meeting. I think it's not next week, but the week after, to talk a little bit of documentation. But this website also has to lead people to the appropriate resources for educational purposes. Whether that's this new SDK website that is in the proposal, or whether it's the reference contract documentation we talked about earlier, or the documentation we talked about last week when it comes to the LEAP, the software itself. This website has a lot to it, and maybe I'm talking about version 3 of the website right now, and we're talking about version 2. But long term, the website itself is a fairly significant project in terms of scope.
Yes, absolutely. Reinforcing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's the design, the development, copywriting is going to be pretty intense because you have to be very knowledgeable of the topic. So there's just a lot that needs to be done. I think we could all agree with that, and we don't have to figure it all out today, but we just need to have these discussions. And I think having the go-to-market group, I think, needs to just meet individually, because this is a topic that really can't be covered on this call, I don't think.
Yes.
But yeah, we can't say like the Antelope's the best tech. You go to the site and there's really nothing except for a lot of verbiage that was mostly written by a branding agency. We got to go deeper than that. And part of that is pointing to all of the tooling and technology that exists across all of our chains, like a reference or an ecosystem page that you would typically see for an individual chain, but for the ecosystem.
Yeah. Great, because Aaron, when you were explaining that, it's about the user stories and the journey that they come to and where we want them to go. So it is broader than just iterating on what we have. There's a lot that needs to go into that. I agree.
How much do, in practical terms, how much do we want content to come from individual coalition members versus from a unified coalition? So let's say, I made a video. I didn't ask anybody's permission. I never do, and I assumed he was fine. And because I just saw the need. I think I did that because I saw if we made that an agenda item, it just wasn't going to happen compared to me writing a script, delivering it, getting it posted in time. But going forward, is that going to be, if I do that, if I talk about, if I give a 5-minute explainer on IBC and, and a 3-minute one on, I don't know, whatever, are those going to be seen by the coalition as something that is good and we should brand for the coalition and support it and everything? Or is that going to be seen as something that's seeking to claim glory for myself or TELOS on something that the coalition is doing? I don't want to overstep, but at the same time, one of the fastest way to get content out there is just to get content out there, right? Just to let people who've done it for years and know how to crank it out quickly do so. So how is that going to be viewed, do you think?
In my opinion,
I thought the video was good.
I think it's going to ever flow, right? So there's going to be high points where we know where we need the content, and in different areas, people will bring different levels of expertise, and we'll lean on that. And then there's also going to be points where milestones where we're doing launches. So I think it will vary on when, how, and how much. And I think we're at the starting.
So no guideline.
Well, I think we're at the starting point where we could start looking at what those guidelines are based on what the need is. And right now there is a strong need for content and the right content for those user journeys that we want to address. So I think, going back to the GTM team and saying, what is a priority? What do we get done, and who can contribute to these pieces, and then have those conversations. I think that that's probably because it is could be a complex and conversation around the asks and those requirements that come back. But
right, and
happens there.
The other piece of that, of course, is if somebody makes something that is for the coalition or partly for the coalition. It goes to Eve's question about support. Like, there's less point in me making something if it's not going to be shared widely throughout the coalition, right? And I think if we are trying to get a lot of content out there, the reality is it's going to be a few individuals like Eve and me and another other people, but it's like it's a handful of people who will push things out there. And if it's not shared, it's not, if it's not seen as being valuable to the whole coalition, then there's less reason to do it, right? So I guess I just want to, and I know that we can't in this meeting do that, but when the go-to-market team just makes those decisions, can you guys get back to us and let us give us some kind of guidelines about it so that we know, so we feel clear in investing the time and energy to get those things out there, because that's one of the things that's sort of a blocker to me. I don't want to just have people go, oh, well, that guy is just like trying to make himself the king of Antelope or something. I want it to fit in, and a lot of that has to do with content, but a lot of it also has to do with the fact that 2 or 3 people are going to actually probably put out the most content, and I don't want that to be viewed negatively by the coalition.
Yeah,
I would gladly welcome other people participating in this in whatever regard. That would be awesome. So,
yeah.
Well, I've been trying to with you as well.
I'm sure Brandon. Yeah, of course. I'm sure Brandon would like, for example, other people recording these calls, making the notes, making blogs at some point, so that he can take a week off or whatever it may be. But for any function, all that to say, like, if I would not see anything. I would gladly support you, Douglas, doing videos, and then as long as the content is good and like there's no issues. If let's say we were to post that on the website for whatever reason, I don't see any issues with that.
Yeah, I agree, and I think part of what we talked about last week as we were approaching the launch, it's we were coming at it from ANF and then also Antelope, but also there is a layer of of value that this is bringing the other chains and incorporating, that innovation that is, that it's the value it's bringing to the chains in a way that makes sense for the chains in their messaging and their go-to-market. And it's a bit more natural because it becomes a differentiator for those chains. So that part of the messaging and content and, needs to kind of be developed so it strengthens, all our stories. And so I think that's an area of opportunity that I saw for launch. But Douglas, I hear you in terms of, what are those guidelines? And if we have, someone that is has the experience and has the stage and can produce the content, for sure, I think this is the opportunity as we start to try to leverage that as much as possible.
Okay, thank you. I'll as you guys get that together, just kind of keep me in the loop, and I'll try. I think as much as possible, the more things we can get those sort of crossover episodes where we get even me and Lucas and Guillaume or something like that talking about these things, the more excited people will be. So,
well, you just brought up an invite that you haven't been formally given yet. But we have an opportunity with our Chinese community to do a Twitter Spaces. They want to replicate what you and Eve already did on the Antelope account. And you were chosen as a co-guest with Eve if you're open to it, but it will be at, I believe, 5 a.m. your local time.
Thanks. I will definitely do it. And
is it 5? That means it's 8?
It's 9,
I thought it was 9.
It's 9 Eastern.
Yeah, so that means it's 6 a.m. for Doug, so he
can
sleep in.
Oh, luxury.
He can sleep in.
That's actually even harder because at about the 4 o'clock a.m.
You'd rather just not go to bed.
Do I stay up or do I get up early?
Yes, Douglas stays late.
But it'll be a really good opportunity. I believe you're both excellent public speakers, and we will be doing like a KOL push to get people from outside of the Antelope ecosystem in on this. So even though it's the Chinese ENF Twitter, it'll very much be ideally like not just an EOS audience. It'll be Web3 that are kind of coming in because of the KOL program.
Wonderful. I love it. Please.
For that, we have
please.
Translator. So we need to keep the messages short so they can translate.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll need
I will do that. Yeah. Okay, fantastic. I'm up for all of those, and yes, when there needs to be translation, I'll keep it short. You guys will just tell me that everything's being translated.
This call's being translated right now. This call's being translated right now, Douglas.
The more we can get all of the chains together. I mean, I have no problem if it's you and if it's a few of us, but I think the more we get everybody involved, the more it sends the meta message that we accomplish more together.
Yes, very much so. Agreed. Yeah, Kirsten, it's the person that you like. I believe Daisy will be the one interpreting. Or usually it is. She's her and I work very, very well together.
I'm jealous that I'm not as good as a speaker as you guys are, so I won't be invited to these kind of things. So
you could join. Actually, time-wise, it's better for you, so you'd be able to join and talk. Why not?
Sure. Good. Invite me if you really want me on there. Talking about the because we had this media and marketing comments, which are very important that we kind of sneaked in. I wanted to talk about the approver and champions, and we talked about the status report, Finality, IBC. But is this are these the people that are the official approvers and champions for all chains? Or is there do we need to have other people on this to approve the code and review the code? That's just that question goes more to Jesse, I think, and to Wax in regard of if that's agreed.
Well, I think everyone benefits if Jesse is involved in this. He brings a wealth of experience It's not just protecting TELOS's investment. It's he has a great perspective on these things. So I think it's only a gain, and I'm sure there's people, like Guillaume or whoever at UX and WAX who are similarly beneficial to everybody if they can have a buy-in.
Yeah, Jesse, what do you think yourself?
That's Tuesday at 2 Eastern.
Yes.
Yeah, I should be able to make that.
And Aaron is special. He has AAA rating, but there's only 2 A's in his name.
You can steal his A and change it to a P in champions.
And put it in there. Thank you.
Just drag the tail down and put it up in the word champions in the title.
That's great. I love that Eve is like we're on the topic and you're finding my German misspellings.
Jesse, he hasn't heard you. I know. I'm waiting for the other one because Jesse's brought one up.
Oh my God!
I haven't noticed it.
I thought I was OCD. I'm at least reining it in. Yeah.
Person, take the A, make it into a P, and put it in the word champions in the title.
Oh my God! No micromanaging Kirsten.
I'm lost Stop anyway. I don't want to make this.
Take your Ritalin if you can't.
I don't know what the English meaning is for parent. So
your title, Kirsten, champions is missing the P. Jesse is trying to guide you in a very creative way, but it's going over your head.
I was just trying to make a joke. Oh, and it's backwards. You have to mirror it and make the tail longer to turn the A into the P. Okay. I'll never miss an opportunity for a joke. I wasn't going to correct you, but
you guys are making me crazy.
Yeah.
Jesse.
Especially when it's a joke that only you get. Those are the best kind.
Well, most of them I probably don't get. So Jesse to his hand on behalf TELOS, and we probably want to ask Lucas if he wants to assign somebody to join that, but I will do that offline on Telegram. Okay, awesome.
Just for the record, I did offer Lucas and I guess like TELOS and WAX to send someone on that call. So I mean, we can definitely ask him, but so far he hasn't responded.
Oh, okay, good to know. Thank you. Okay, so for the wallet SDK approvers champions, and for the like reports and stand up, Aaron. So is there like still a regular meeting for this that you are reporting the progress or discussing the progress?
That has not started yet. I think the part of the phase we're in at this point is still we need to sign the contract. We need to get that in place. I have started the groundwork for some of this. There's a Telegram channel that I don't think I've invited any of you to yet. We can figure out who the stakeholders are, both from a technical perspective and a branding perspective to make sure that it aligns with the broader Antelope strategy. And then we can set up reoccurring calls on that front. So I think none of that has started yet, but this is the path that we're heading down.
Okay, so what is what is holding back the contract signature currently?
Their drafting of the contract. The actual making of the contract is what's holding up the contract not being signed. So Aaron, we talked to Jeff yesterday. I think Jeff is working on this. And Jeff, if you're still here, you can confirm.
Yep.
We've approved all the deal points, the deal memo, which just has to be basically papered. Right?
Formalized, yeah.
Yeah. And so will we have the same approver mushrooms for that one, or are they going to be is it going to be?
Well, the chains have already.
The other. Okay, no.
You mean
okay, we're not going to
signatures.
Yeah, I was mostly just trying to make Eve laugh.
I couldn't hear. So I
was going to ask if we had the same as approver mushrooms. Sorry, man. It's a bad French joke.
Kirsten, champignon in French is mushroom. which the mistake earlier actually kind of looked like chump. Not really, but yes, but I got it.
That's what it looked like to me. That's why
Yes.
I said, I was like, oh.
And for the contract, no. So the
All right.
contract would be a contract from so similar to when we do the RFPs, where we say like ENF on behalf of Antelope, or at the time, I guess, the coalition, because it needs to be a legal entity, and essentially the ENF is the only one with one. Right now, the Treasury is on EOS, whatever. So the basically everything's already approved. We just need to put the pen to paper so that there's a contract between two entities, essentially.
Yes. Okay. That's all fine. So then the question is, by when do we expect that contract to be ready and signed?
I'll leave that to Jeff.
Yeah. I'm hoping to have a draft for our quick review, hopefully by the end of tomorrow. So
maybe next week.
Maybe by next week. Let's give me a little bit of buffer there, because I know we've got some other things, and I don't know how the next couple of days are going to play out quite yet.
And I guess just to put some extra context on this, we don't have a defined start date yet. I think that's still in the air. I feel like my team is going to force me to take a vacation before I get too deep into the leading of this on them. But I would anticipate things are in full swing in the next 4 to 6 weeks at the latest. So I know we got probably a week or two contracty stuff. I already have resources working on the project, but it's all early phase stuff anyways.
Yeah, I was actually thinking that you started already, Aaron.
we have in a lot of ways. I mean, this has been something we've been thinking about since last November now. And we started writing code for new SDKs like 3 years ago. But to formalize all of this in a new package and, make this an official project and not just our thing, that's what I'm talking about starting in the future. So I already had to push our designers off of using different Antelope names or theming it off of it, because Elite may use those as code name releases. So we will, either way, we'll hopefully have some good branding.
Okay, great. So we get some weeks time to kind of look on these and start with the actual process once all the paperwork has been done. Okay, excellent. Okay, looking at the time, process committee votes, I would deprioritize this item. We talked about this. Guillaume, you said you're going to work on that concept, right? So we could have like our development outreach Nathan to also help you working on that if you need some hands to do this.
Sure. And also Stefan was part of that early discussion. So I guess that would give us like a start of a working group, I guess.
I will talk to Nathan on our side and ask him. I think he'll be happy to help, but I obviously have to ask him if he's got the resource to do so. But we find somebody else if he hasn't got the resource from our side, because I also think that's a very important thing. Okay, so we've got this. Yeah, the RFP Secure Smart Contract Library. Jeff, you want to give us an update on the RFP process?
Yeah, so we have 4 companies that are bidding on this, which again, I think is pretty exciting. Shows that there is growing community interest in what we're doing, putting SDKs out. In terms of the schedule, this week they have been, or this week's their time to submit questions back to us. So far, I've gotten one question formally back, but again, I think a lot of these organizations, we know them all. This is the first time they're going through this as well. So on Monday, I'll make sure the answers are collated, and all 4 of them will get a copy of it. So it'll be, here's the question that was asked, here's the answer. And then they will have 2 weeks till the September 16th to turn in their proposals. And then at that point, we will need to go through a selection exercise. Prior to that point, and actually, Kirsten, this is an action item, I think, for you and I, is we need to make sure we've got that process well defined. So perhaps next week, we can present that, because we don't want something that's complicated, but we want something that shows as much impartiality as possible. Because, as I said, we know all 4 of these companies. 3 of them are not going to get this. They're not going to be thrilled they're not going to get it, but if we can show impartiality, at least that will go a long way in soothing their pain, so to speak.
The one that's on there called, I'm guessing their name is not Why Not Might Opt Out. I'm guessing their name is Why Not. Can you expand on the might opt out?
Yes, the name is actually correct. It's Why Not, like why node. So that's the name's correct. I've been talking to them, and they're a development team based in South Africa, working a lot for us, and also been working on the EVM side. But they said that if they wanted to opt in for this, they needed a resource they have not much access to at the moment. So they wanted to verify this. But I personally would think that there is a 70% chance that they opt out because they don't have the required resources they would like to have for this.
Thank you. Thank you for expanding.
Yeah, I along with that, like those, we think that compared to who else is up there, it's just because they're a new group and a number of other things that they're very likely to be one of the 3 that's not, more likely than others probably to be one of the 3 that's not chosen. So, so we're trying to manage their expectations with the caliber of everybody else who's bidding, I guess I'd say.
One thing that I mentioned to Kirsten, now if they don't have resourcing, that's one thing. They certainly shouldn't apply. But if they do have resourcing, but they're thinking they may or may not be qualified, there is an advantage to them going through the process so that they can understand it and know that, we hope to put more and more RFPs out there, and that the next time they would feel a little bit more confident even about the process. They don't have to, of course, but there is some advantage in doing that.
Yes.
Right. I don't want it to be interpreted that I said they're not qualified. I just think that they are less known, certainly less known, and less, there's some really good competition there. So I think they are, when we express that to them, they are internally judging whether it's worth it to do that. We will convey that to them, that there's that advantage. They're certainly quite good. They're working on it, but everybody's got to figure out where they put their resources, and it is resource intensive even just to put out a proposal.
Yeah. Apart from that, the other parties are well known, and working actively with the ENF as today. So this would be the only non-EOS vendor that has been applying. So okay. So that's for now for that. Any update on the P2P RFP? I mean, we know OCI is working on the bid, sending documents back and forth. So is there any status update on this, Jeff?
Yeah, so we met with OCI today for other purposes, but in that meeting, they did confirm they understand tomorrow is the deadline, and they were on track for getting us their proposal by tomorrow. So I have not seen it yet, but as soon as we do, of course, we will make sure that that gets into everybody's hands so we can start the review and discussion around it.
Excellent. Okay, so we touched the documentation work group that it's supposed to be meeting in the week after next week. So that's from 5th to 9th of September. There has been a lot of discussion in that group, so I'm looking forward to having that meeting. On a side, as we talked about this, is anybody already has anybody stepped up in with the intent to head this work group and coordinate the activity? Take this as no. So I'll ask the question in that corresponding Telegram group, who will take the lead of that work group? We did have some last kind of issues with the GitHub migration that were pointed out in the chat. Has this all been entirely resolved with access to repositories and so on?
Can you open that item?
There is not much in here. I just added this in here. Jesse, you mentioned that some of the pointers were not opened at the point of time. So I just wonder if that's all solved.
Is that the discussion we had earlier? Just start off this call, or is it something different, more administrative?
That might have been.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's that or just another issue of for some reason, some permission sets were not ported over, or whatever it may be.
No, I think there were some repositories weren't opened up yet. So, but I might be wrong. So I just recall that there was some kind of discussion.
Yeah, the only one that I would have been bringing up would have been the contracts. If we're talking about ones that aren't public,
but it can't be that because that says August 11th. So it's something that was like from previous to this. So if everybody's good right now, I mean, we did migrate it over, and if everybody's got access, then I'm guessing it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't recall if there was something. I have moved on and forgotten about it. But no, I mean, there was maybe it was the website. Was that the day we did the launch, the 11th?
No, the website's another thing. I don't know if you guys figured that out, but just to have redundancy in administration.
Oh, yeah, I do owe that to you, Ted. Setting up the access or migrating the DNS to an ENF AWS.
Yeah, either one's fine, just as long as we can work together.
Get redundancy. I mean, yeah, we will get to that. At this point, just for context, I could get hit by a bus. At least 2 or 3 other people at TELOS have access to it. Justin, JT.
We didn't have access when we needed it when we were trying to launch the website. So
yeah, that too.
We've got East Coast, West Coast redundancy.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, maybe that was it. But I don't have anything for this particular item that I can recall being critical.
Yeah, no. Then it's fine. It was an old ticket, and so I don't recall exactly what it was. It was at launch day when there seemed to be some things not finally configured on GitHub. But if there's no issue anymore, then we don't need to spend time on it. Okay. Visual identity discussion next steps. I put this to September 1st because that's next meeting, and we do have this meeting that's going to happen in regard of the branding. So I assume that's going to be happening in that call too. I'm not going to talk about this. This is not due for today. We discussed that. And this is not for today. Okay. Anything else you want to raise? I mean, we're at the 10 o'clock
hour
my time.
mark. I think that's it.
Kirsten, did you just ask if there's anything else when there was 2 seconds left on the clock?
Yeah, exactly.
There's nothing left. It's done. We're on the hour.
Okay, guys. So and ladies and gentlemen. So if there's Madame et Messieurs, if there's nothing else, then I'd love to close the call for today. Thank you, everybody, for discussion. Stay healthy. Have a great evening and morning or day. See you next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.